Ecclesiastes chapter number 4 and verse number 13. And I have kind of gotten hung up in this passage, and I would like to try to develop it as the Lord shall help me on the broadcast today, and so we can continue moving forward. Better is a poor and wise child than an old and foolish king who will no more be admonished. And then the outgrowth of this refusal to be admonished, who will no more be admonished, for out of prison he cometh to reign, whereas also he that is born in his kingdom becometh poor. So a king, an old and foolish king that refuses to be admonished, will become a tyrant. Now, yesterday I dealt with that word better. Better, of course, a comparative word. You can't have anything that is better unless you have something that is worse. In every class you're going to have, in school, you're going to have one child that is the best student in the class, and you will have one child that is the worst student in the class. I can remember back years ago when I followed NASCAR racing closely, and they would start a 40-car field or a 43-car field, and between the pole, the fastest car, and the car that started, that qualified last, would only be a spread of about a second or a second and a half. Now that certainly is not very much time until you put that on a racetrack. But even there, you had a best car and a worst car, and though they were only separated by a second, in a school set aside for high achievers or for students that are academically gifted, you're still going to have a best student and a worst student, though all of them may make A's. I have seen situations where the valedictorian and the salutatorian were separated truly by hundredths of a percent on their grades. It was just hundredths of a percent. That's a virtual tie. Better is a poor and wise child, a comparative word. Now I understand that we live in an age today of egalitarianism, where every child, quote unquote, is a winner, and where everyone gets a trophy, and where everyone is praised and lauded. But still, you can't get away from this area of good and evil, right and wrong, up and down, better and worse. You just simply can't get away from it as much as you might try. Now, why is the poor and wise child better than the old and foolish king? The king is not lesser because he's old. Solomon puts a premium on old age. You realize the only alternative to getting old is dying young. And I certainly don't want to die young. I would like to live to be old. I would like to live to become an old man. He's not worse or lesser because he's old. He is lesser, comparatively speaking, because he's foolish. And that is compared with what we just read, a poor and wise child compared to an old and foolish king. And the reason for this separation between the wise and the foolish is over the matter of admonition. Who will no more be admonished, who will not accept admonition. Now, whenever we use this term admonition, to be admonished is not necessarily to be rebuked. Now, on occasion, we have just outright rebuke. There comes a time in all of our lives when it would be incumbent upon us to call down and to call out things that need to be rebuked. I mean, things that need an outward, open, harsh rebuke. Having said that, this matter of admonition carries with it the idea of a gentle reproof, or I could say it like this, a counseling against a fault. In the multitude of counselors, there is safety. All of us would be much better off, and we would all certainly be much wiser if we would be given to the matter of trying to seek out good and wise counsel. There are none of us that are beyond the need for counsel. All of us need counseling at some point. Now, I'm not talking about going to a psychiatrist necessarily, or going to a therapist. Now, I'm not referring to that at all. But there are many times when I'll have a question about a certain thing, and I will try to seek out the advice of men or women that may know more about the matter than I do. There are times when I have needed advice on a construction job, and I'll call my general contractor and I'll ask for his advice. Just a little while ago, before I came to this radio mic to record, I was talking with my general contractor about a project that we're working on now, and I was asking his advice. What do you recommend here? The subcontractor made this comment, said this about it. What do you think we should do on this? How would you handle this? What would you do? And I don't have a final answer from him, but I will listen to whatever he tells me. He knows more about it than I do. That is the matter of admonition. The other day on another project, another construction project, I had an idea, and I went over with the subcontractor what was in my mind. Then I immediately called the general contractor and said, this is what I told the sub. What do you think? And the following day he came back and said, now explain to me what you have in mind, what you're wanting to do. Admonition carries the idea of counseling. In the multitude of counselors, there is safety. Not one of us know everything, and not one of us know everything we ought to know. And there are other people that can contribute to your understanding, contribute wisdom to you in areas and in things that you may be deficient in or may be lacking in. Now, the reason that the old king was foolish is because the old king would not let anybody give him any instruction. He would not let anybody give to him caution. He would not be directed. He would not allow anyone to give him direction on what he should or should not do. I think it's extremely important for you and me to understand and to recognize our own limitations. Whenever I ask men for advice, I ask them for advice with the hope that they can broaden me and enhance my understanding and give to me wisdom that I don't have, or wisdom that I might have overlooked. When I ask men for advice and admonition, I'm wanting to know more when they finish admonishing me than I knew when I asked them for a word of advice. So the matter of admonition or admonish, number one, it carries the idea of warning. And we don't like that because it also notifies one of a fault that they might have or a weakness they might have. Then secondly, to give admonition is to give counsel. It is to give advice, both positive and negative. Remember when I began this message, I pointed out better, and there we have that comparative word. You can't have anything better unless you have something worse. You can't have anything that's right unless you have something that's wrong. You can't have good unless you have something that is bad. So to counsel carries the idea of counseling against wrong practices. To be admonished, to give admonition, is for me to give counsel concerning what is right, but it is also to give counsel against what is wrong. Then again, number three, whenever we have this area of admonition, the matter of admonition carries with it the idea of instruction or direction. We read in Hebrews chapter number 8, Moses was admonished of God when he was about to make the tabernacle. There are some men that think they know it all, And they're not going to listen to anybody give them a word of advice. You and I are to seek out instruction. We are to seek out direction. We are to seek out good admonition. And then sometimes there's someone that will be at fault in the church, and Paul warns that we are to count him not as an enemy, but admonish him as a brother in 2 Thessalonians and chapter number 3. The reason the old king was regarded as foolish is because he wouldn't let anybody give him instruction. He was a know-it-all. He knew everything he needed to know. It'd be as foolish as a man or a woman standing up and say, Brother Ben, there's nothing I need to learn because I know it all. Now, I hope the message has been a help to you. Tomorrow on the Bright Spot Hour, I'll pick up in verse number 14. Because the old and foolish king that will no more be admonished will become a tyrant. And we find that in verse 14. Be sure to hear the Bright Spot Hour at that time.
Write the Bright Spot Hour at Post Office Box 4, Greenville, South Carolina 29602. Visit the website